All right, let's get on with it, because while the stragglers come in, oh geez, like let's all just stare at them as they walk down there. No, all good. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me for today's session at NDC. I hope you've been having a great NDC Melbourne. I've been having a good fun time myself. It's great to be back here, and I'm really excited to be talking about developer workflows and the role that .NET Aspire can play to improve your experience and improve getting involved with working on complex, particularly distributed applications. My name is Powell. For those who haven't met me before, I work at Microsoft, part of the developer relations team. My specialty is .NET and Azure. I've been doing .NET development for about 20 years now, so I have plenty of war stories about bad developer workflows. So that's why I'm excited for tools like .NET Aspire that hopefully help this out. If you want to connect with me on any forms of social media and stuff like that, you'll find all those details there on the screen. But for today, I'm going to do a little bit of role playing. I'm going to pretend that I am a new hire to an organization, and I've been assigned a couple of bugs, and I want to get involved in the application and get up and running. We've probably all been in that space where whether it's a new hire to an organization or whether you've just transferred into a new team, it's like here's some stuff on the backlog we want you to get started with. It'll help you get familiar with the application. You've got to get set up. Okay, cool. Well, so we have a moderately complex application here. It's a web application front end. It's also got a mobile component, which I'm not going to be touching on today. I am definitely not a mobile developer, so but it's part of our overall application architecture. There's a whole bunch of backend services. It's essentially a distributed monolith. The application is eShop. If you've ever seen a member of the .NET team presenting on it, you've probably seen them present about eShop. But yeah, I think we have about 9 different services that we have to have running. We've got a database, we've got event bus, we've got AI because it's 2025 and we have to have AI in it. We also have occasion, things like that. We've got a lot of different moving parts. So I said, I'm a new hire to the team. It's time to get started, and the team lead says, okay, just head over to the wiki. It'll give you the guide to setting up your development environment. Okay, cool. So I head over to the wiki. They knew it was out of date when told me to go to the wiki. I knew it was out of date because it's a wiki, and it's always going to be out of date. Okay, I know I need a database. Well, like what database engine are we running? I've got to go. So now I have to go and talk to other colleagues, interrupt their work, and I'm a new hire. I feel nervous about interrupting. There's plenty of seats down the front. I don't bite hard. And there are stickers at the end, so if you're at the front, you get first dibs on the stickers. Just as that's also an incentive to stay around. Anyway, I feel nervous about going in and in disturbing these people that I haven't built up a working rapport with yet. So it's going to take me a while. It could take me the better part of a week just to get my development environment up and running. And I feel bad about doing that because you told me to use the wiki, but it's just of not any help. And like I said, we've probably all been in that space. I was doing consulting before joining Microsoft, and yeah, it was very common that you didn't know what you installed. Okay, I saw that if we look back at our diagram here, so Postgres is the database that we're using. Sweet. What version of Postgres are we running though? Do I download the latest one off the Postgres website, install that? What if that's the wrong database engine? Now my development environment is not going to match any testing or production or anything like that, so I could be inadvertently introducing issues because it worked fine on my machine, and that's really all that mattered, right? No. So so we end up with this suboptimal experience. So let's have a look at what that kind of first touch experience would be like with this application. So I've got eShop here. I've opened it up. The first logical thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to try and just launch it. I want to see what happens when it launches. And when I was doing consulting work, this was like my sort of litmus test. The first thing I want to do is I want to see where do things break when I first try and run the application. So I've started this up. Let's launch a terminal window where hopefully some stuff is going to be cool. Unless we've gone a ridiculously simple web design, I'm pretty sure that's not what the UI is supposed to look like. So something's clearly amiss, and there is a whole bunch of error messages that have appeared in this terminal log. So okay, obviously this hasn't worked. I need to figure out what software I need to install. Also, another problem is that only launched one of the applications. I got told there's like 9 different services that need to get up and running. So now I come into Visual Studio, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to come into here, I've got to do configure startup projects, I've got to launch multiple startup projects. I actually went through that beforehand, so I've gone through and set start on all the various projects. So, okay, now I've got a full stack, so I can hit run on that. Let's see if that gives me some more insights on like maybe what I'm missing and so on and so forth. So this is hopefully, it's taking a little bit longer. Obviously, it's now just throwing terminal windows at me left, right, and center. This is not a great experience, right? But it's the kind of experience that we just accept. Like, this is how we do development, particularly in a distributed application. You're going to have to launch a whole bunch of stuff, and now we're just going to be assaulted with, oh, no, we've hit an exception message. Visual Studio is, but no, here's a browser again. What's going wrong? Okay, so we've failed to connect to something. It's in migrate DB async. Okay, so it's failed to connect to our Postgres database. Unsurprisingly, I don't have Postgres installed, or maybe I've got it installed, but it's on the wrong port, or I've set it up with a different username and password as my default credentials on Postgres, and now I've got to go and reconfigure that because I missed that step in. We'll eventually get through this. Like, I'll install the right software, I'll set everything up credential-wise, and then I won't update the wiki. And it won't become a problem until we have our next new hire or our next person that joins the team and all that kind of stuff. Fundamentally, though, this is it's a suboptimal experience. Thankfully, because I wrote this demo, I know how to get this up and running. So I'm going to grab some Docker commands that I've got here, and I'm going to just start up a bunch of containers which are going to be for our database, our RabbitMQ, our Redis, and our Olama server. I'm pretty sure I did paste and enter. I'm pretty sure my machine is just like decided it is time to grind to an absolute halt, and that means that I'm going to have some demo failures. So chalk that up for 7 minutes into the talk. There we go. Okay, so there's Redis. There's RabbitMQ, then we got Olama, and now we've got Postgres that we'll be starting in just a second. Excellent. So there are our database, and there's everything up and running. Cool, there it is. We can see that in Docker. So let's come back and let's launch our application again. Because I was able to figure that out. Obviously, I'm speed running through the process of determining what some of this stuff is because I conveniently wrote the demo, but you would start from that stack trace and you would start walking backwards and figure out, okay, what's the database engine from that? Or you'd be poking around in the CSproj file or whatever the case may be to figure out the database engines that you need, the Redis versions that you're going to be working with, RabbitMQ, and so on and so forth. But here we go. I think we're getting closer. We've got a browser window open here. We haven't had Visual Studio break yet, so maybe that means that everything is successful, possibly. Yep. No, wait. No, sorry, Visual Studio has broken. I can see the play button is back, which means that there is an exception. Ah, great. Something else is missing. And again, like it's just frustrating, right? You know, you'll eventually solve it and you'll eventually get a working machine. But okay, so it's a failure to get on the embeddings generator. Again, because I wrote the demo, I know what that means, but you would walk back up, what's the embeddings generator? Well, it turns out that I don't have any models loaded into my Olama instance because I just pulled that Docker container, didn't I? Okay, so we're going to come in and we're going to load up our, we'll come back to Docker desktop here. Let's find Olama. Go over to exe and go Olama, pull all mini LM, just to pull a small embeddings model. This one's only about 60 megs, so this should actually pull pretty quickly. And there we go. Look at that. Progress bar success. That will do that. A couple of them will run. Okay, excellent. So that's pulled. All right. Third time's a charm. Hopefully we're going to get this up and running. We're still getting like all these terminals spewed at me. So if I need to find like which one is associated to which running process, I don't know because they all just say C user, Aaron, source, repo. That's what I'm seeing in the terminal tab. Like I don't know which one's associated with which, but yeah, it should be all fun. We should have our working development environment. Okay, that is, I think, our Swagger endpoint, was it? Whoa, how am I finding where is it? There we go. Ta-da! We got our application up and running. Admittedly, like that only took the better part of 10 minutes, but the thankful fact that I have practiced this demo a few times, I knew where the errors were going to be, and I knew what we were, but the reality is, yeah, like I said, you're probably going to take the better part of a week to get something like this up and running. But after that, it's fine. Like, you just continue on, you do your development as normal, and it only becomes a problem the next time you need a new machine, next time someone new joins the project, or whatever the case may be. But ultimately, I feel like we can do better. And this is where .NET Aspire comes in. .NET Aspire, it's going to do a whole bunch more stuff than I will cover off in this demo. I really want to focus on .NET Aspire for the developer inner loop. That's this process that we've just gone through. How do we set up our local development environment to have that developer inner loop? So I start projects, I debug, I close Visual Studio, I come back later, rinse and repeat, that kind of workflow aspect there. There are other things that we will see, things like the developer dashboard and stuff like that, and ultimately it can be used as a deployment tool to Azure. They recently did a change to deployment, so you can publish out a Docker Compose file, so you can publish that somewhere that supports Docker Compose. AWS is working on publishing so that you can publish a .NET Aspire application through to AWS and all that sort of stuff. But deployment is beyond the scope of what I've got time for today. So we talk about Aspire-fied applications, because Aspire is adding stuff to an existing application. And that's kind of why I wanted to use this eShop demo rather than do like a file new project, because file new project obviously speed runs through having everything ready for you, but I don't feel it's intrinsic of what a lot of people are. Like, you have existing applications and you want to be able to leverage them. And this is like just some feedback that we've had from customers that have started to leverage Aspire in their environments. Like, that they went from taking a week to bring on a new developer to an afternoon. Like, that's a radical improvement in efficiency. Just to get someone up and running in half a day rather than the better part of a week means that they are able to be contributing to the velocity of that project a lot sooner and a lot better. So when we talk about this developer inner loop, we have an app host project in .NET Aspire. So that's what we're going to add to our solution. It's a new project SDK type, and it's going to be managing it's going to orchestrate the application that we have. It's going to orchestrate the starting up of all the services and then additional resources that we need. So, and that's we'll write that in .NET or in C# specifically. I could probably write it in F#, and there might be one person in this room that would be excited for that, but probably not. Actually, no, there would be. It'd be me. I'd be that one person. There are dozens of us F# developers. The app host also gives us the Aspire dashboard. This is a centralized place where we can see logs and telemetry. You know how we just had that spew of console windows pop up? It's a single unified view of that. And then if you want to opt into the open telemetry logging system, you can do that, and you get then more enriched logging through the Aspire dashboard. But again, that's something you can opt into. We can then bring in external integrations. So integrations are NuGet packages. We have hosting integrations and client integrations, and we'll see those a bit more as we dig in. And then optionally, you can generate out a manifest, which is instructions for a publisher on how to publish to with AWS, Azure, to a Docker Compose file, or if you had your own internal infrastructure, you could write your own publisher to take that manifest and do whatever the process is that you're deploying to your own on-premise infrastructure if that was more desired. So yeah, any cloud. While I do work for Microsoft and I am in the Azure part of the business, this isn't a talk about Azure. Aspire can be used regardless of where you're deploying to, and in fact, we're not going to talk. We're not going to do deployments. So let's go and do some Aspirification. I do not think that is a word, but that was what I wanted to go with. So let's close everything down, get all that out and off and running. And I'm going to pop back to our terminal. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can start adding Aspire to this solution. Now, this is my main goal here is I want it to be as non-invasive as possible. I don't want to be rewriting my application to use Aspire. I want to use it to uplift the developer loop of working with this application. So I'm not tackling a rewrite. I don't want that, because that means that I may introduce bugs or anything like that, and that's not going to improve our efficiency if I'm just adding a whole bunch of bugs. So I can use the Visual Studio add new project experience. But with the Aspire 9.2 release that came out just before Easter, I think it was, we have a new Aspire CLI. So I can do Aspire new. And this is, there's a couple of things we can do off the Aspire CLI. One of them is new. And this is then going to give us a list of the Aspire project templates that we can add to this project. I'm going to use the app host, but you can see you can also bootstrap a brand new project from start, like you complete greenfields if that was what you wanted to experiment with. So we're going to start with an app host project. I'm going to call this eShop.appHost. Just from a convention standpoint, we tend to use .appHost as the suffix for an app host project. I'm going to put that in source, eShop.appHost. And then this is going to search for what templates. We've got the 921 template, so I'm going to use that one. And then this will take a moment. It's going to download that template. It's then going to essentially run .NET New under the hood, and that's going to add that project into the location that I specified. So now I can come back into Visual Studio and go, right-click on here in the solution folder, and then add an existing project. And then we'll find our eShop app host, and we'll add that in there. I'm just using a solution filter in Visual Studio, so I just got to reload that just so I could have the MAUI stuff removed from it, because I didn't want to accidentally start an emulator for a mobile application. That was going to really cause my laptop to have a heart attack. Okay, so our app host, I just got to remove one thing just with this project. It's using centralized package management, or CPM, with NuGet. So the versions are all specified in a single file. So I have to just remove the version out of this, because when I did the new, it didn't know about CPM. But that's only because of the way that this repo is set up. So we have our .NET SDK project. We have the Aspire app host SDK that's added to it with the particular version, in this case 921. But otherwise it's a standard .NET application, a standard .NET project. Have a package reference to the Aspire hosting app host, which means that inside of my program.cs I get this frustrating point where it hasn't reloaded everything properly. Okay, we're just going to reload the solution. Which one is it? That one. Sometimes when you get packages are not restoring properly, I'm going to blame the fact that I'm using the preview builds of Visual Studio rather than a stable build, because I wanted to add some extra challenges in it. So inside of our app host project, we have our distributed application builder that we create. So this is going to manage a distributed application. Now, that doesn't mean that this is only for applications that are going to have like n number of microservices or anything like that. It just means an application that has multiple different resources. It could be like a single web front end, monolith style, but you've still likely to have at least one database attached to that. That's distributed in terms of just the generalized concept of architecture. You have, unless you've somehow managed to embed the database as SQLite inside of that one, please don't do that. That's not a great idea. Anyway, so on our distributed application builder, we can add resources to it. Let's start by adding our resource. We're going to start by orchestrating all the services that I need to get started. So my basket API and so on and so forth. I can do that in a couple of ways. I can right click on our project, go add .NET Aspire orchestration support. I actually have a couple of app host projects in here. So I'm going to select eShop app host. And what we will see is that we end up with a project reference added to our basket API in my CS proj file. And then inside of my program.cs, it didn't fully run the VS tooling, which means that I have a bugged file with a product team. But what it was supposed to do is it was supposed to add that to the distributed application builder. But we can do that manually. I can go var basket API equals. There's going to be a lot of live typing of this, and there's going to be a lot of me making mistakes. Builder.add project. And because we have that project reference that was added, there's a source generator that runs on those project references, and I actually get strongly typed access to those projects. So I can do projects dot basket API. We'll give this a name of basket API, and we have now orchestrated the basket API in our distributed application host, so it knows how to start that up. Let's do that with all the other ones that we've got in here. I'm just going to drag and drop the project. Did you know you could drag and drop in the Solution Explorer to create project references? So I drag a project onto another project and it creates a project reference. No one really seems to know that. And it's like, I don't have to like right click and then like 3 more mouse clicks. Drag and drop, it's the future. Drag and drop demos is the way to go. There we go, so we're gonna add identity, we're gonna add orders, we're gonna add the order processor, payment processor, web app, webhook client, and lastly, webhooks API. So there we go. So that looks like we got all of them. I'm going to guess that's 9. I think I got them all. So let's just pin that to the right. Now we can go and say var catalog log API equal equals builder dot add project. This is going to be a little bit tedious because Copilot is not helping me in the way that I wanted. Catalog API. And because I've got like everything's so zoomed in, I can't see properly. Where is the end of my line? I should turn on word wrapping, but I can't remember the shortcut key to do that. Okay, so we'll rinse and repeat and fill that out. Come on, Copilot, you can do it. No. So we've obviously got to do this for all the various projects in here. So var identity builder. In every single time I've dry run this, Copilot has just been like, oh yeah, I'm going to just like fill this all out for you. That's why I put the stuff on the right. And today it's just not. API.
What if you select the projects on the right-hand side? Do you think that would...
Nah, I can see I'm not getting any ghost text at the moment. I'm going to go yell at Damo, who's in the room next door, who works at GitHub and is doing a Copilot demo at the moment, I think.
Copilot chat window had an error when you first started today.
Oh, did it? Awesome. That's...
Probably why it hasn't reloaded.
Oh, actually, I can see. I am currently not signed into Copilot. Checked, yeah, whatever. This is not a Copilot demo. That should have been API. So what's that? Ordering API, builder. Okay, so as you can see here, there's a lot of other things that I can do rather than just this add project of the C# thing. I can add an executable. So if I had like I wanted to start some kind of external process that I have on my machine or that's part of our application, I can run that. Like it could be like Node. If you want to run a Node application, there is actually I don't have the package installed, but there is better support for like Node and Python and things like that. We've got native Docker file support, so if you have like a Docker, something you want to run as a Docker file inside of your environment, you can add that as well, and then we'll see some more stuff as we kind of build this out. Whoops, I don't want to add Docker file. Add project. Okay, what do we got? We're up to order processing, order processor. Processor, payment. Oh no, that was ordering API. Oh no, I've missed one. Okay, that could be order processor. What is it? Payment processor. Add project. This is fun. This is really fun. I am totally not sweating up here. And processor. I've missed the ordering API, yeah. Ordering API, because I accidentally did the wrong one. Project. Also, if you don't have to use the generics here, you can just provide the path to the CS project. So if you don't want to do that direct project referencing between them, you don't have to. Ordering API. I'm just going to start spelling stuff wrong. What do we got? Web app equals builder.add project projects.web app web. Each of these resource names have to be unique because that's how Aspire is going to identify them. And that's webhook and webhook API. So webhook client, and then we'll do webhook API, webhook API. Yeah, whatever. That one can be a poo. I have a whole half sleeve of Simpsons tat, so I'm allowed to put in a poo in there, I think. Webhook. That was client. web hook client, and then lastly, it was web API, web hook API. All right, there we go, done, near enough. Okay, so, oops, I didn't want to hit F5 there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to change our startup project, rather than being this full stack, to being our app host project. So what will happen is we're going to run our orchestrator. So this app host project, sorry, I forget that the microphones are here, I'm not mic'd up, so I shouldn't walk away. So the app host project, that's going to launch up, and it's then going to manage the startup of all of the resources that we've specified in our app host now. We've been thrown into the Aspire dashboard, and you can see here we have all of our projects up and running. If I was to click onto the web application, there we go. It's still working exactly as it was prior. I haven't changed any code in any of those projects yet. So we're like, and we could stop there. Like that, like if that was just, you just want an improved way to launch, you don't want to have to check in the thing that says, you know, like that full stack and have all those startup projects. You just want a better way to hit F5 and launch everything. Like that's a perfectly acceptable use of Aspire. Like you can opt in as much as you want. But with these resources here, as you can see, it's telling us where they're all running. It tells us all their URLs. I can click onto them and I can get some information about them, like where's their process, what they're running, what are their HTTP endpoints, environment variables that they've got access to that Aspire has bootstrapped, which are then obviously available through the ASP.NET config system. I can look at their terminal outputs. So rather than having all these terminal windows popped open, I can see the terminal information here from the Aspire dashboard. And then as we get on, we've got things like structured logging. I have some minimal amounts of stuff that's configured with OpenTelemetry already, so I can actually see those OTel logs within inside of my dashboard, stuff like that. And that was without changes to any of the other projects. I just added a new project to our solution. Let's carry on and let's start with the next layer of orchestration, which is starting to bring in some of those external resources that I didn't know what versions to install. We're going to start with the identity project. I'm just going to bring it up to the top so that it's a bit easier to find within inside this list. Now, if we have a look at our identity project here in Visual Studio, we go to our app settings developer, we see that, well, it's got a connection string in there that's hard-coded. You probably shouldn't hard-code connection strings and commit them to a Git repo. Not the best idea. This is just obviously the development connection string, but it means that everyone's environment has got to be configured exactly the same way. The database has got to be on localhost on the default port. I don't actually know what the Postgres default port is. We're going to have a database called identity, and this is the username and password. If I set mine up with a different username and password, then obviously I have to change this file, inadvertently check it in, and then break everyone else on the team. Okay, not ideal. So let's get Aspire to take care of that for us. Again, there's a couple of ways that we can do this, but with the app host project, I want to add an Aspire integration. So these are just NuGet packages. So I can use the Aspire tooling, so add .NET Aspire package. And then from here, I'm going to search for Postgres. And then here we go, we can find the Aspire hosting Postgres package. So a hosting package is a resource that you want to run through the app host that is some kind of external system. A database, an event queue, a local AI model server, whatever, running Node, Python, those sorts of things they're hosting packages, the things that you host. Then you have client integrations, and we'll get to clients in a moment, but they're always prefixed with aspire.hosting from the Aspire team. So we're going to install this package here. We'll hit accept. Obviously, I could just modify my CS proj file if I wanted. I could use .NET add package from the .NET CLI, or I could use the Aspire CLI with Aspire add and then give it the name of the package. But there we go. So that's added, and if we see our CS proj file, we'll see that we now have this hosting.postgresql. And what that means is that inside of my app host builder, let's just save and make sure all NuGet packages have been restored. So I can go, we'll go var pg for Postgres, and we go builder.add Postgres. We'll call that pg. There we go. I've just installed a Postgres server in one line of code. And what that means is that I'm also installing the Postgres server that is going to be the same version on everyone's machine, because where like the version is dictated by this app host that we're defining, which means that we have a consistent development environment again. And if we're using the manifest publishing, we would have that information embedded inside of that, so we can ensure that the one that we're running development is then reflected in how we're taking that outwards from a publishing perspective. But that's just a database server. I need to add databases to it, so I'm going to create an identity DB, and that will be on Postgres. So that resource that we get a resource builder, and I want to add a database to it. And we'll call this identity DB. So now I have my database that's being added to that Postgres server. And I can I can then leverage the builder pattern with the project that I've got here, and I can say with reference to the identity DB. So now I'm telling my identity API that it is needing a reference to our identity database, which needs a reference to their identity, the database server. So we have that, now we're codifying that relationship between the resources within our system. Because I need this database to be ready to do an EF migrations as soon as the identity application runs, I actually want to say, I want to wait for it to return healthy. If the database isn't healthy, I don't want to run I don't want to run my EF migrations because it's probably going to fail. So we're going to say, oh, Copilot is back. Hi, Copilot. Thanks for joining the party. Okay, so we can say with reference, and then I want to do a wait for on that. Let's hit F5. Oh, actually, I shouldn't have hit F5 because we haven't actually consumed that within inside of our client application just yet. We'll give it a moment. I'm going to have to terminate that once it starts. Actually, we'll see it in the dashboard, and then we'll terminate it. So what is this integration doing behind the scenes? Well, it's actually going to be running Postgres inside of a Docker container. So you can see the source of this is that particular Docker image, docker.io/library/Postgres 17.2. So it's pulled that down, and then it's set up that identity database. But we want to consume this now with inside of the Identity API, and we're going to do that by leveraging the Aspire integration for NPG SQL ND framework call Postgres. Now, because this is a client integration, it doesn't have aspire.hosting, it just has Aspire as the prefix. Now, I'm just going to modify the CS proj file here, but you could do that through right-click on the project file, .NET add, whatever the case may be. Okay. Now, this is where we might actually start doing some modifications to our code base. So here's how we're bootstrapping that connection string, and we're looking at that connection information from our from our config file here. I'm going to delete that because we're not going to need it anymore because Aspire is going to provide us with that. And instead of doing builder.services.add database connection and then on the connection options specifying use our NPG SQL, I'm going to say builder.add NPG SQL DB context, and that's application, oops, not application builder, application DB context. And then it was identity DB. So that was the name that we gave it with inside of our app host. So that's identity DB. So that's the name of the connection that's going to be available here. And that's the only code change that I'm going to do to this application to make it work with the Postgres database that's being provided by Aspire. But what's it doing behind the scenes? Like I said before that I didn't want to Aspirify my application by like having to do big code changes. Well, if we step into this code and just have a look at what it's doing, I come down. Ultimately, all this is doing, is that the right method? That's the right method. What this is doing is it's really just a bunch of logic around looking up the config information to bootstrap the NPG SQL ND framework integration. You'll see that it's going and getting DB connection settings, connection settings. So this is going to look into the .NET config system. So it'll look at the environment variables, which is actually what we're passing through. It's going to be looking into the app settings.json file or any other config systems that you've got loaded. It's going to create an object that's available there. It's going to get the connection string off that. And then it's going to create that DB connection pool that I was previously creating. It's also going to do the thing, options, DB context option builder, use NPG SQL. Again, the code that I was writing. But it's also doing a few things that we weren't doing and would be actually a good idea for us to have done, which is things like enabling retries so that if the connection fails, it will retry a certain number of times. And then we can configure that as part of the connection information. Like that's kind of a good idea to have in there as retries and even timeouts. It's also going to do a few things around OTel so that we can get that logging of and insights across traces and telemetry of using Postgres. So let's launch our application now. Now remember, I've deleted the connection string, so assuming everything is correct, we should still be able to talk to that Postgres database, and we should still be able to seed it with our username and password. We haven't changed how the migrations work. They should still just be working the exact same way. You'll notice that the identity API is in a waiting state because the database is in an unhealthy running state. The health check is finished. Then the identity server started because we said wait until that is healthy. If we were to click onto the information about the identity API, we'll scroll down. We'll see that there is a connection string that has been injected by Aspire. So there is our identity DB connection string. If we have a look at that, that's a connection string, that's a Postgres connection string. It's got a randomly assigned port because it's running in Docker, and it's randomly generated a port so that you don't have collisions with other containers that are on there. Or if you had a locally installed Postgres server, it's not going to collide with that. It's randomly generated a password. I don't know what that password is. I have no need to know what that password is because it's just randomly assigned for it. And again, this is stuff that I no longer have to have hard-coded anywhere in my application. And again, assuming everything is working correctly, I should be able to click through here. I should be able to come onto my login, and we go Bob, pass $123, and not sure what that error is about, but we were able to successfully log in. That means that our database got seeded successfully. So our identity API is talking to that database, but I haven't had to set up anything other than now commit this, and I can just clone that repo onto a new machine, and the database is there ready and available for me. But I had to go through that login process to prove that the database was there. So I want another way that I can inspect that. So I'm going to have to go out and install something like pgadmin, which is a Postgres tool for inspecting Postgres database servers, similar to SQL Management Studio. But with Aspire, I can say with pgadmin. And there we go. Now I'm just adding pgadmin as a resource into our resource stack. That won't get deployed or anything. It's a local development resource. It gets removed from any published manifest. Other things I could do is I don't want. This is a database. I want it to persist between application restarts. So I'm looking at a bug. I've done something. I've generated some new data. I realize there's a bug. I want to go fix that bug. Restart the application. At the moment, the database is completely transient, so every time I start, I get a brand new database. Not ideal if I want to replicate that bug. So I can say with lifetime, because it's a container, and I say container lifetime, I'm going to make this a persistent container. So it's going to live beyond the restart of the app host. I could do other things, like if I wanted a data volume or a data bind mount, so that I could persist that data between restarts as well. Maybe I don't want the container persisted, but I want the data persisted. I can do that with mounts. And I just realized I had caps lock on. Awesome. But okay, so let's add pgadmin and make this a persistent container. Launch this up again. Give it a moment. There we go. Poor little laptop is like on fire right now. I've got 2 versions of Visual Studio running, plus I think now 5 Docker containers, and I'm about to throw a few more at it. Okay, so there we go. So because this is a persistent lifetime container, it gets a little pin and it's always going to float to the top. So that's that way we can see it, and it just gives the tooltip's giving us a bit of information saying that it's not going to be destroyed when the app's restarted. We can see pgadmin is now in there as a resource. We're just waiting for it to start. It's going to take a moment or so. We can have a look at the logs and see what's happening there. Now, I expect that this is just going to be able to talk to my Postgres server because that's how I've configured it. I shouldn't have to then go dig in and find that connection string that was on the identity database or anything like that. It should just magically have all of that because, again, it's inside of this resource stack. Let's click onto that. There we go. There's pgadmin. We go servers, Postgres, databases. So Postgres PG being our server. There's our identity DB. There's our schema, public. Tables, we successfully had the ASP.NET identity tables were in there, and if we hit select, we can validate that I did have the data was all seeded exactly as I expected. And now this tool is just, it's always going to be available to a developer when they open up this application. We don't have to have that additional step of like, I want to check the database for, okay, now I've got to go find something, download and install. So I think being able to bring those kinds of things in is really useful. All right, let's start looking at some other stuff that we can add into this. We could, other things we can bootstrap, let's add our Redis and RabbitMQ. So I'm gonna just pop these in here rather than go through right-click UIs, Redis, and then what was it, RabbitMQ. So we'll save that. And then I can do things like var redis equals builder.add redis. That's gonna come in a second. Oh, that's not how you spell Redis. Redis, there we go. And then I can say var event bus equals builder.add RabbitMQ event bus. There we go. And then I know that the basket API requires both of these, so we could say with reference to Redis, and say with reference to event bus. That's right, it's called event bus. And let's do a wait for on the event bus. All right, now with our basket API, we can use instead of just going to directly to the Stack Exchange Redis package, we can use the Aspire Stack Exchange Redis package. So again, this is just a wrapper around it that's going to have some of the simplification of how we find that connection. So we can comment out that line and go builder.add Redis, that's add a Redis client. And this was called Redis. There we go. Now again, behind the scenes, all this is doing is it's doing config management, it's doing retries and any of those other good defaults to have in there. And then if we were to use Redis in multiple places within inside of our application, we would have consistency in the way those services behave because they're getting configured in the same set of defaults, and we can override one in the other. If we needed longer retries or more retry counts on something else, we could just do that in one particular project. With our message bus here with event bus, we can get rid of that code. We go builder.add rabbit. Got to update this project. That will be Aspire, and I'm going to delete the direct references because I keep getting package conflicts by having these ones here. I just had to hard code the non-Aspire versions in my package references before, so I can get rid of those. And then where was I? There's the extensions. No, that wasn't that one. Here we go. Builder.add RabbitMQ client with the connection that was provided. Yeah. Simplified a bit of code, but we haven't changed any core behaviors of our application. If we were to launch this up, we would see, obviously, we're going to start seeing more and more resources in our Aspire dashboard. We're going to see more relationships between those resources as well. So let's get this up and running. Talk amongst yourselves while we just wait for my machine. It's all right, little laptop. There's only like 15 minutes to go. You'll survive. All right, so now that we're starting to define out our infrastructure stack inside of our Outpost project, and we can see the things that are in here and like the relationships that they're causing, and the basket is now waiting for event bus to be ready, we can actually start visualizing how our application is coming together. So we can see that the identity API has a relationship to our identity DB, which is then which then has a relationship over to the Postgres database server. We can see PG admin has that relationship there. We see the basket API is also has a relationship between those between the event bus and the Redis and things like that. So we're starting to now get that. What we would have done maybe statically as a Visio diagram or a mermaid chart or something like that, where we've defined out our infrastructure. We can infer our infrastructure because we've codified it. All right, we've got one more external service that we need to bring in, and that was Olama. That was what was bootstrapping our little bit of AI. So inside of our post, we're going to come in here and we're going to grab this. Now, there's no official Aspire package for Olama. Instead, there's an open source community project called the Aspire Community Toolkit, which I'm one of the members of, and that has an Olama hosting package for us. So we can go community toolkit .aspire.hosting. We follow a similar naming convention, just with community toolkit as the prefix. Olama, llama. So that will bring in that hosting package, which then means that inside of my program.cs here, I can go var olama, llama equals builder, add olama. NuGet packages are taking a little bit longer to download. There we go. Okay, it's there. So we can add Olama, and then we needed to make sure that we had models such as the All Mini LM, and Llama 3.1 is what we're using as a chat model. So we can say var embeddings model equals Olama dot add model called embeddings, and the model name was All Mini LM. So we could do the same with chat model equals Olama.add model chat, and then we'll say Llama 3.1. Now it is the catalog API that requires the embedding model. So we could say with reference to the embeddings model, and we would wait for the embeddings model to be ready because we did the embeddings on application startup. And then lastly, in our chat catalog API, we can use the community toolkit .aspire.olama package, and then tell it to load it from the Aspire configuration, which is all the way down here. We go builder.add olama. Oops. Olama. Come on, NuGet. Package restore. There we go. Package restore. Builder.add Did I open the right one? Community Toolkit Aspire Olama. Ah, there we go. Just had to wait. Embeddings, and we want this using Microsoft Extensions AI interface. So we'll say as an embedding generator, because that's what we're actually doing in that code above. Again, this is going to go out and figure out how to find that from configuration, and we can then inject that same connection configuration information in a deployed version of the application. If we launch this one up, what it's going to do is it's actually going to download that model on our behalf because we added that to our resources stack. So again, like you clone this repo and you haven't had to go in and like know how to use the Olama CLI to download models or anything like that. It's just taking care of it because we've. I feel like I'm repeating myself that I've codified our infrastructure design, but that's really what we're ultimately trying to achieve. There we go. We can see that there is our embeddings model, and we can see that the download has started. And now we have our catalog API waiting because that hasn't obviously hasn't downloaded yet. That one's going to download pretty quick. Can't make it wide enough, but yeah. And then we start seeing more and more with inside of our infrastructure stack of now catalog is linking to Olama. It also links to chat, which I haven't obviously integrated anywhere just yet. All right, there we go. I think we get the idea of what that's doing, and I'm not sure what those errors are behind the scenes. We'll just ignore them, pretend they aren't actually happening. Okay, so let's have a look at what we can keep rinse and repeating this pattern across all the other services. Make sure that they're moving off the locally run Docker containers that I did at the start, or like the installed Postgres server and stuff like that. But we'll eventually get there, and obviously that's a little bit boring to watch me type all of that stuff out. So let's jump over to one that I created earlier, or a fully completed version of it. So I'm just going to delete the Postgres. So I've got no existing ones, and this one's not zoomed in. Okay, so this is eShop. It's been completely Aspirified. It's completely inspired, something like that. We said we've got our post builder, distributed our post builder there. We're forwarding things like the ASP.NET headers, so making sure that they get passed around, because we're essentially running a bunch of reverse proxies in front of all of the services that get started. We have our Redis, we have our RabbitMQ, and we see that we've got some lifetime stuff. Our Postgres database, what I hadn't got to yet was we're actually using PG Vector because we're storing the embeddings as vectors inside the Postgres database, which means that we needed to use an alternative container image. In this case, and we can do that with Aspire. I can specify that I would have used a particular image, not just the one that's baked in. So you can pin that to an image. Maybe you've got a customized version of Postgres that you use in your organization. You can use that image. You can specify a specific tag if you wanted to just override a particular tag. I want to use the Docker Postgres container from docker.io, but I want to pin it to a particular tag. I can do that with inside of here. And again, it's codified. We can see that. The database is all created. We're creating our identity API. Something I hadn't shown was that when we deploy this, we might not want everything to be publicly accessible. So things like the basket API, catalog API, those are back-end services. I don't want public HTTP endpoints or HTTPS endpoints. So here, we're actually specifying that. We're specifying the identity API needs an external HTTP endpoint because it needs to do those callbacks and stuff like that. But intrinsically, all the other ones are going to be private endpoints. So there is no public way to access the basket API when we're deployed to something like Azure Container Apps, or if you're deployed using to a Kubernetes cluster or something like that. Some of those services are not going to have public networking. They're going to be only private networking. And what that means is that we can then leverage service discovery in .NET. So if you publish as a Docker Compose file inside the network, you can use the name of the services inside the Docker Compose file to refer to them, rather than the HTTP localhost or their direct IP address. And that we can see that here inside of the extension, inside of how we're connecting to the API, the various backend APIs for the web application. We're doing things like I want to talk to the basket API, and I'm just doing HTTP basket API, because service discovery is able to take over, and we have that built in from the Aspire aspect. And there's to leverage that in production, there's a few things you just need to add to the ASP.NET pipeline, or the .NET application pipeline, to enable service discovery. But then you don't have to worry about accidentally having things public that shouldn't be public. Let's start up this fully complex version of the application where we have all the relationships configured, all the resource, external resource definitions configured. Literally, this is just before, when I was setting up my machine, did a GitHub clone from the main branch of the .NET/eShop repo, and then opened it in Visual Studio, restored NuGet packages in F5. I hadn't had to configure anything else on my machine to make that running. And we can see there we go. Everything is up and running. We've got a couple of things that are still happening behind the scenes. We can have a look at what is now a very complex resource graph. I'll zoom out. Obviously, you can't see it as clearly what the resources all are, but we can see the relationships between this. So this is the ordering API, and we can see that that's talking to the ordering database, the order processor. It talks to identity. It's actually a bidirectional communication between the identity, or bidirectional relationship, because it needs to be able to do authentication, and but there's also a callback that needs to happen in there. The web application talks to it. And again, that's just we know how to generate that diagram. We don't have to have that as a static diagram that was created by the architects at the start of the project and then just drifts from what the application ultimately is implemented as. If we go back to the table here, I think everything should be up and running by now. Awesome. We can, click through. I thought we had some errors of things that started up. So I can click on this error. So this is now obviously we've bought into a bit further into the Aspire ecosystem, and I've enabled more enriched logging and telemetry and stuff like that. But you don't have to. If you're using Seek and Serilog as your logging platform, go for it. There's no need to leverage the logging aspect of Aspire. You can just have it orchestrate out your environment. And it's saying you don't need to use it for production deployments. But obviously we had some kind of an error when it was talking to the SQL database. It was trying to execute this SQL command. But because the catalog API is then started successfully, I'm going to assume that what what it's probably done is it's leveraged that retry that we got just by using the Aspire package. But here I can come through, I can see the trace. This is the trace that happened. The error is the one right down here at the bottom, but then it kept going. So it's done that retry and re-executed that SQL command. And we can see that kind of end-to-end trace that's happened there. And that's our fully running application. But that also means that we've got about 5 minutes left in the session. If you want to learn more about .NET Aspire, keep forgetting the microphone is here. If you want to learn more about .NET Aspire, there's a bunch of links there on the slides, aka.ms/.net.aspire. That takes you to our learning docs. There's a bunch of samples at github.com/.net/aspire-samples. This one is the eShop application, which is at github.com/.net/eShop. And Aspire is it's an open source project, so you can find that under the .NET organization at on GitHub. But thank you for joining me today. I hope you've seen how we can bring in Aspire to orchestrate a complex application and that it's something you can progressively adopt with inside of your application. You don't have to buy into every single feature from day one. You can start with it just starting up a whole bunch of projects, so you don't have to have a complex start script with inside of Visual Studio. You can add external resources as you want to migrate away from install this database server. We can port that across to a container and all that sort of stuff. If there are any questions, I'm going to stick around. I'll be around for the rest of the day. But at the very least, thank you for joining me. I do have Aspire stickers if anyone wants one. I also have floppy disk stickers. I think there's probably no one here that is too young to know what a floppy disk is. The save button. I've got save buttons, physical save buttons.